And welcome. We're today Baarns Heller, and we have a special situation going on. Johnny Heller has been replaced and upgraded with Lillian here, and so
There's no replacement for Johnny.
yeah, but it's great having you. So here's what's happened. Johnny's in New Orleans at doing a multi-day conference with all sorts of people and having a good time without us. And so we've been downgraded in my case to where I'm the only host today, and and Rochelle is our guest who has a pretty cool backstory, and we're going to talk about accents and a lot of other fun things. So if you can hear this, if you can see this, be sure you throw a comment in there. That really helps me know that everything's working. I have all my little meters here going, and right now everything looks good. But without you telling us for sure, then we don't know. And as we're going through this whole process, be sure if you have a question for us, then go ahead and throw it in the chat. And all right, Tina, thank you. I see the little sounds great. That's super helpful, and
Good.
absolutely appreciate. So, Lillian,
Hello.
Rumor Central. Look at that in your background. You have this weirdo thing, which appears to be some sort of flag. Does that
Yes.
relate to your childhood or something?
Yeah, British born and bred, baby.
Okay. And then you downgraded and moved to to California. Is that correct?
Well, that's not so bad. Well, I moved plenty of places in between. So I've actually done 7 transatlantic moves.
Wow.
Lived a little while in Germany, and I think maybe 5 different states as well, several places in England. So
Oh.
yes, I
What,
think we're settled now, though.
now, is this because you're an army brat, or you just like
Well,
change
no,
every
not
2 weeks?
army. No, my husband was Air Force.
Oh,
So,
I
yeah,
got okay,
so
okay. Sorry, I should have said, is he in the service or
military, he was.
military? Okay.
Yeah, he was active service Air Force for 26 years,
Yep.
and then we ended up in DC
Okay.
as happens, and, you get stuck at the Pentagon for a decade or so, and and then the kids graduated college, and we're like, "Why are we staying here?" So,
That
we've
makes
come back to where he's originally from.
that's awesome.
No, usually it's like Australian, Kiwi, New Zealand. I've got South African once.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah. A
Wow.
lot of people, like, they ask me where I'm from. I say England. They're like, "Yeah, I know. Whereabouts?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, but some people just, don't know. You don't know, but you don't know." So,
So now the one thing, let's see. So I'm going to check something here on my end and see. I'm going to try something.
okay.
And I am trying something here because I am guessing on something. Hold on here. So, yep. I have a dashboard that's telling me I changed some settings and I upgraded them all in case it was the settings here, and I still am having an intermittent issue going to YouTube. So, well, first off, I can never tell during the middle of the stream exactly what is garbled, if anything. And usually, what happens is the picture comes in fantastic, and the sound will end up garbled for a second or two, and sometimes it can last longer. Just for if anyone does
Okay.
hear me appropriately, I don't. We can't tell on our end. We sound normal. We sound exactly the way we should. We have a direct connection, and then we
Yeah.
can't tell what's happening on the other end. So throw a comment in there if something comes up that you can't hear. We'll repeat something. If something ever goes catastrophically wrong, we will just do this again another day. And YouTube has been having intermittent issues here over the last couple of weeks. And last week it went great, 0 issues. This week I see something, but I cannot tell how that really is. So you backed into this accent thing. I have an accent, you don't. When you were in the UK, first off, when did you start the narration thing? Did that start early? Did that start after you got in the States?
No. Well, the first time I did anything VO was when I first moved to the States. So that was the first time I moved to the States was in 91. So that was
Wow.
back then. That was
I re-
radio commercials, literally just because of my accent. I had no idea what I was doing.
and
But
they wanted, well, did you notice that people in the States love a real English accent.
Yes.
They think,
And usually you can tell. Well, British people usually can tell. Although I
yes.
do have some handful of narrator friends who do a banging British accent. But you sometimes you can tell.
Well,
Usually you
that
can
wouldn't
tell.
surprise me at all. But here's the thing: in the States, this is if someone's a newer narrator, they may get a character that has a Southern accent. Well, there is no Southern. I mean, there is no
True.
quote Southern. This is not news to you, but there's no Southern accent. I mean, Kentucky's totally different from Louisiana, from Georgia. I mean, there's 45 or 267 Southern accents, so you kind of pick one. And I know most people that do quote Southern, they pick something that's mid, what I would call this. I don't think that's an official term, but mid Southern, which means they want everyone to know the character is from the South, but they don't necessarily care that it's a mix of Texas and Kentucky. And
Mm,
now, does that happen in the
it really
UK? Now, the
does.
natives always hate
Absolutely
it.
really does. It really does. I always say there's as many different accents in the UK as there are in the States. It's just condensed
Okay.
into a small little island. So you go like 20 miles up the road and there's a different accent. So, and again, when people want the British accent, they're usually asking for some kind of typical kind of what I would call a southern accent.
Hmm.
The south of England, not the way south, mid south, London area
Okay.
usually is what they're looking for, or the RP accent, the received pronunciation, the very proper English.
So is that also known as posh?
Posh, yes, yes,
That's
RP is a posh accent, so and I learnt that one when I went to boarding school, so I did not have a posh accent at all. I'm an Essex girl, or as I should say, an Essex girl, so
Yeah. Okay.
so I had an Essex accent and, which is similar to East London, but it's just a little further estuary.
Okay.
A little further east than that. And then I went to boarding school and was schooled in elocution, and thus started my knowledge really of accentism um, and people. Because then everything was the BBC accent as well. You
Okay.
wouldn't hear regional accents on television very much at all. But yeah, code switching was a thing.
But so that that also very early on let you know that there was more than one way to pronounce things
Yes.
and to emphasize things to create your original native tongue, and then that RP or posh or whatever we're going to call it. Um, you actually at a very young age understood that there were two. Someone like me, I didn't know I had an accent. I'm from the Midwest, from Michigan, and it was
Okay.
only when I moved to California people would say, hey, you have a you don't sound right. And so, but I'm in my 20s at that point, so I was very, very unaware. And then I did go to the UK, and if I
Mhm.
said the word hello or hi, or if I ever said nice to meet you or anything, the first thing they did was said, "Oh, you're American, aren't you?"
Immediately,
With one word.
immediately.
I could say hi or hello, and they would instantly pick up on it and say, "Oh yeah, yeah, you don't speak English, you speak American." I remember I was told that explicitly that I don't speak English, but I speak American, and I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't even know.
Oh.
So,
When I lived in Texas, I was complimented on how well I spoke English a few times. Not unironically, people are like, "Wow, you speak English really well. Where did you learn?" Because all they knew that I was speaking English with an accent.
okay.
And so, I was like, "In England? You speak
Yeah, we're
English in England?" And they were blown away. I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, and so obviously when you moved here, you already knew because you already like unlike me being ignorant, like I didn't know I had an accent
No.
because I don't think young people know they have an accent. They assume that the way they speak is the way everybody speaks.
That's the way you grow up and that's what all you hear,
Right.
then that's what you know.
That seems
Yeah,
normal. So in your
yeah.
case, you already knew there were two, and then you get to Texas.
Or
Did you
more than 2,
Right,
yeah.
right.
Because
Did
you hear again, England's small and you hear accents all around you all the time.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And so then when you came to the States, were you grabbing Texas as How did you get into doing like right now by book and
It's a whole everybody, including narrators American. That's
that's a pain.
much more what I want to do. But if there's American characters, then I do what's known as like general American.
Right.
Yeah,
So do you
yeah.
pick? So do you have a reference point in the like you? Because a lot of people do Midwest, or do you have a reference area? Like you might say you knew.
Probably not as flat as what people say the Midwest accent is
Uh-huh.
generally flat. It's probably more of a mixture. Definitely some, I don't know. I will. I won't say Californian because after moving here, I've noticed there really is a Californian accent, and I'm like, "Wow, you sound so Californian, like,
Yes.
talking to people." That was wild because I thought my husband sounded Californian, but he doesn't. He's much more general American, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, if someone was a new narrator and I want to learn, well, first off, it's a different world today because I do think that the pure accents, so South London, Detroit versus Kentucky, because there's so much movement of people all over and the internet where we're
Mm,
watching things, it's less specific to regions than it used to be. Is that your experience? Are we close? How's it looking
yes,
for you?
definitely. Yeah, things are definitely getting merged. Even now, there's what's called, like, a new London accent,
Oh,
because London's so diverse now. It's like, the London is not pure Cockney, but it's like a London accent, and it's mixed with, um, people from different regions, different countries
right.
because yeah, and it's just there's a whole different vibe to it now. It's definitely merged.
So if I were brand new and I want to learn to do a British accent so that I have a British flavor, how would you how should I approach? I mean, first off, it's highly popular, and I should
Yeah.
disclaimer. I don't know why. Well, my wife has a background in singing, so she picks up accents very
Mm.
quickly. And some reason early on in her narration career, she did a book that was full British, and she knew enough because she had traveled when younger, and she picks up accents. And anyway, she speaks other languages, some French, some Spanish, some French, some a couple others. Anyway, some German, some French, and so she was conscious of this stuff. And when she does British, she will be the first to tell you, "Oh gosh, I'm a mess." I mean, that's her words, meaning that she combines and she picks and chooses what she says now. Like she wouldn't say like I'd say croissant. That's not the way
Right.
the French pronounce it. I don't know how they do. She does. And if the word croissant comes up and a character saying it, she does this little mental gymnastics of, oh, that guy's an idiot. He's like, he's like me, ignorant.
Uh,
And so she'll say croissant the way I might say it if the character is
yeah.
from the same place that I am, as opposed to doing an authentic French croissant, whatever that would be. Where
It's
would you
yeah,
advise me?
it's which syllable you emphasize makes a difference as well. Even between British English and American English, the word can be pronounced more or less the same, but you emphasize a different syllable. So
Yeah,
there's
schedule.
little
How do you
things.
say schedule? I know you don't.
Yeah, schedule.
Yeah, yeah.
Schedule. Yeah.
That one I knew was. It did. I spent a bunch of time in the
And it
UK.
depends who I'm talking with as to how I say things as well. When I'm talking with Americans, I generally sound more Americanized.
Okay.
But when, I'm talking, like, to my mom on the phone,
Uh-huh. You revert.
com yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, get much more British.
Well, but
Yeah.
that makes sense. That's smart. And do you do the same thing when you do characters?
Yes, definitely, and it does depend on the character and the attitude of the character, and, my dogs are barking. Can
Yeah,
you hear them in the background?
I
Is
can
that
hear them.
okay?
Everybody
Is it
hears
too
them.
loud?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're a terrible
Yeah.
person having dogs.
I know. The worst.
Although,
Why do narrators have dogs?
yeah,
What
my
is that
80
about?
pound guy literally is, you can't see him. I can't, he's sitting down below me
Oh,
and he's
yeah.
just sleeping, and he'll sometimes start snoring, and people are like, Your audio sounds terrible. I go, no. Well, it might sound terrible, but it's also that my dog is sitting here with me and he's in, unless I'm recording. I don't let him in while I'm recording, but he's in because he's usually pretty good and quiet. So that's life. Okay.
Yeah, one time my dog was in the booth, and I don't generally have her in here when I record, but, I sent it off to my editor, and he's like, "There's this really high-pitched noise in the background just right here." And I could not hear it because I'm old, but he could hear it, and it
Right.
was when my dog yawned.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, sometimes they
Yes.
yawn and they do this little squeak. Yeah,
Yes.
that was
And
bad.
people, well, the world's a quiet place until we start recording. And then once
Mhm.
we're recording, little details like a dog yawn, a stomach gurgle gets picked up
Yeah,
by the mic, and people don't realize it. Now, if it's within a word, 95% of our audience will not notice that. But if it's not within a word, then
yeah.
people will notice it potentially. And if we catch it, we'll take it out. But I've heard, because anyway, there is. So let's talk, but forget about that.
Okay,
The
what were we
reality
talking
is,
about?
though,
Accents.
all those noises come in. So if how would you advise me to learn so that I could do something that I only need to say I have a minor character
Mm,
and I want to be able to have them have a British feel, despite the fact that I'm not going to do East London or
yeah.
Essex specific.
I find it's real on something like that, it's really good to have a character point of reference, from a TV show or a movie who is actually English,
Okay.
as opposed to somebody not English. Um, for me, a good starting point is always mouth placement as well. Like,
Okay, but I
American
don't
is further
understand that.
back in further yeah,
Please
exactly,
explain
exactly.
that to me. Please explain that to me.
You've got to, if you listen I don't know. I'm not an accent teacher, but Americans speak further back in their mouth. Like,
Okay.
the whole thing, like, the way their tongue placement is and everything is further back, um, and if you're watching someone, like, if I'm scrolling through Instagram and I see somebody on screen and my sound's off and I look at them, I can tell if they're speaking with an American accent because their mouth is slightly
Really?
wider, and if they're
Really?
speaking with a British accent, they're usually more
Well,
forward in the mouth,
oh,
and
wow.
that's a fun game to play,
But that's
but,
fascinating. That
yeah,
means that
it's
there's a
you
little
can
bit of
tell the
science to it as
difference.
well, correct?
There's a lot of science to it. Yeah, a lot of science, and there are some great accent coaches, which if you are a narrator, it's really good to get a good few accents just really nailed down.
Right.
So you're like, you can, like, slip into them right when you need to, and then, so you're really confident in them. But every now and then a book comes up with an accent and you're like, "Oh, this is Ukrainian." Like, not Russian, not just Eastern European. They want Ukrainian, and so you have to, like, do crash course. And so, there are some accent coaches that I'm like, "Okay, I need Ukrainian. What are the best tips I've got for focusing in on which vowel sounds do I need to make sure I pick up on? How do I hit this consonant?" And as your wife would know with being a singer, the musicality
Right.
of an accent is different as well.
Yes.
So just sometimes listening to the native language, even if you're not speaking the language. For example, when I was trying to do a French accent, I would just watch, somebody French on YouTube or something, and just listen to the musicality of it. And that inflects the way that they speak English.
Okay. Now, and then how long do you need? So, how long do I need to practice that in order to, be able to say? See, I mean, I can say
Oh,
something
no.
with a slight accent of one type or another. The point
Mm.
where I've always gotten burned, and I've stopped. I don't do it very often. Is that if I have to do a pickup a week later, a month later, I'm dead in the water. Where it's like, I don't know. I did my pretend Jamaican. Yeah, man.
Oh,
And
no.
but I had no point of reference, and so it was whatever came to my head at that moment. And that's not the by the way, that's not the way to do it. It does not work very well. So
Mhm.
so
No.
how do you do it?
So, well, if I just have one line in something,
Hmm.
I probably wouldn't do the whole crash course. If it's just maybe one line, a minor character, and it's not a recurring character,
Hmm.
you could maybe get someone who does speak in that accent, to record that line for you so you can
Oh,
hear exactly the way things should sound.
right.
I know people who have done that. So, apart from that, having that point of reference really does help. And usually I have characters pretty clearly in my head through prepping the book and reading the book. So I have a picture of that character and I know what that character's like.
Okay, so you
So
do a
so I
Julie
kind of
Dench. What's her first name? Who?
Judi Dench?
Yeah, you
Oh,
said
yeah, me and Judi Dench. Yes, Dame, the Dame, me and
yeah,
the Dame in
yeah.
one sentence. Yes.
So she might be a reference maybe for one of your characters. I mean, is that the type of thing that makes sense? I find
Yes,
somebody that,
yes.
and then I could go find her, like
And listen to her, and then that gets your mind thinking, "I just listen to them."
a little secret. By the way, for people, one of the things that allowed me to be stronger than a lot of my peers at a younger age was that I listened to thousands of hours of music. Like I used to put on headphones at the end of the day, and I would listen for multiple hours to different types of music. So then when it came up, I had some type of, so sometimes this was sometimes the only thing I could do was perform like the person that was my reference point and try to imitate him or her. And if I actually pulled it off, people thought I was really good or smart because I was just cheating by using something from that I had pulled from another piece of music and putting it in there. And they're like, "Wow, that's really good." And I remember thinking, I just played this one thing that I've heard 400 times in this one song and it happened to fit perfectly in this situation. And they just thought I was smart. And I was thinking, man, I just listened a lot.
Well,
But,
that is smart, though. That's
well,
working smart.
yeah, I had a good teacher, though, that kind of, it is working smart. And I
Mhm.
had a world class mentor who was like, you got to be listening. And it became a game for me. And I would hear things over and over and over and over and over. And I'm guessing with accents, I've got the same path ahead of me. Is that correct, Claude?
An ear for accents, yeah, because it's the musicality of it
And now when
that
you
helps.
do American, do you have your kind of Midwestern-y?
Yeah, I it's no particular area, I have to admit. If I have to do a particular area, I need to listen up to the changes and the specifics for that area, but it's a
Okay.
very general American, yes.
Okay. And you don't, yeah. So if,
Yes,
so now,
and again, same with Southern, if I have to do a Southern accent, I just you know, I wouldn't even know where it would be from, so if I had to do a specific place,
right.
in order to be respectful to that place, I'd have to research it more.
Now, do you care about,
Mhm.
see, I have a theory. Now, I'll get beat up by all the accent coaches, but I have a theory that the audience, that
Okay.
first off, the audience doesn't care in my mind that I do Kentucky, but the character grew up in Tennessee. Simply because nowadays it's working out that some people who are in Kentucky did grow up in Tennessee, and so as long as the character is consistent within themselves and you can tell which one it is, I don't think anybody really cares other than an accent coach who goes, "Ah, Don, you're an idiot. That's not Tennessee. That's Kentucky or whatever." But I just don't think
Yeah.
it's all morphing together because people move so much anymore. That I live in California, but I have a Midwestern accent that has a hint of Californian, and I spent some time in the UK, and I say brill a lot or brilliant, or I have a few words or phrases that I picked up along the way, and people go like, "Where are you from?" And it just confuses them. But that's more normal than it is, or I think, than it used to be. So let's talk about
Yeah.
if I were brand new, though. I'm gonna go ahead and watch some movies. I'm gonna find my reference, and then should I take coaching?
Yes, I would recommend coaching, of course, with someone that knows how to teach it. You can always if you're recording, you can record yourself and
Mm-hmm.
listen back. So if you can even see the sound waves and, like, try and match what you're listening to, and if you don't sound the same, then if you've got to have an ear. It's always better to have a second opinion. If you're not sure if you're not sure, have a second opinion because you could be embarrassing yourself,
Well, I like what you
you
just
just
said
don't wanna do
there.
that.
You have to have an ear. And that one of the things. So there's a lot of things we can teach in this business quickly. One of the things that takes a little more time is teaching people to have an ear. It is not.
Mm.
It is first off, you don't know what you don't hear until later when you hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's really one of the toughest things. And it's one of the things that the good coaches can hear things that I'm not hearing as a voiceover artist, as a narrator. I don't narrate much, but I've done plenty of voiceovers where I have to do some of these things. And it's like, I hear it later because I edit the stupid stuff and I go, oh, that was awful. That was
Oh.
really bad. That was okay. That was, hey, that one actually worked just fine. And if you can get some perspective and listen back a week later, a month later, that's also a big deal. So what do you talk about? So first off, if somebody's brand new to this business,
Mm.
where should they focus? What would you do different if you were starting today than because you started off doing voiceovers? Is that correct? How many voiceovers did you do before you found narration?
Well, I did those radio commercials back in '91, but then I stopped. I was like, I I I just dropped away from voiceover
Okay.
completely, and I didn't come back until 2017, I think. Yep,
Oh,
2017, and it was audiobooks that lured me because that's what I wanted to do. And I did not come from an acting background. So I always felt like I had a lot of catching up to do because
huh.
it's acting. That's what it is. And as natural as you may be when you're reading books, it's not always the same as narrating and acting the audiobook. So I took acting lessons, improv, that type of thing, really good. It's one of those things you don't know what you don't know. Right? And as I was coming to the industry completely green, I knew nothing about the industry. I knew nothing about the tech. Um, and so it really was, my learning curve was almost vertical, but I was just soaking everything up. And I was training for about a year before I said, okay, I'm going to do a book now.
Wow.
Because I had so much to learn. Um, but if you're new, it's like learning about the industry, all the different areas of voice acting that there are, all the different genres. For me, it was audiobooks, but then once I got in and then I realized all these different genres, and so I got distracted by all these shiny things. I took coaching in commercial and coaching in narration and coaching, I don't know, everything. It was like, oh, yeah. But then I just came back to audiobooks. I'm like, this is what I enjoy, this is what I love, and this is what I'm booking. So I think I'm just gonna focus here. Narration is my jam. And then, when you talk to voice actors and you tell them that you're doing audiobooks, they're like, ooh, good for you. I
Yeah.
could never do that.
Yeah. They
And I'm like,
definitely
well, you
say
know what? I can't do commercial. So I
one.
don't book commercial. So there you go. Just two different things.
Well, one's a marathon and one's a sprint, and they're different animals. Just like I don't, I don't know a lot about running other than I run away from things. But as far as, but I do notice that runners specialize in a short run or a long run, and I don't remember too many athletes that say I'm doing marathons and I'm doing a 100-yard dash or a short sprint. I mean, it's like you specialize in one or the other. Now, do you go after specific genres, and what did it take for you to figure out, because audiobooks is like accents, there are so
Yeah,
many variations.
so
How
many.
did you find which one fit you the best? What do you do, what's your favorite to do, by the way, right now?
I really like anything historical. So whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I just love the historical bent on things.
Mm-hmm.
So I do get a lot of historical fiction. I get cast in historical romance a lot. I think American writers write a lot of British historical romance.
Okay.
So there's a lot of that out there, and I get a lot of that, and I love it. So not complaining. Historical literature is good, historical nonfiction. I just finished a book, a philosophy book that was written in the 18th century. So that was That was fun. Um,
Now, did you
it
find this when you came into audiobooks? Were you finding this genre to begin with, or did you what did you start with, and where was your starting point? Did you get
yeah,
historical fiction right at the beginning, or
I
did you
did.
you
I
did?
did. Yeah, I
So
did.
how
Um,
did you find those? Did you start on ACX? Did you start with
I
an agent? Did you?
I started on ACX.
Okay.
Yeah, as I think a lot
Yeah,
of narrators do.
a
It's a
lot
good
do.
starting point. It
Yeah.
is a good starting point, although it's a bigger mess now than it was when I started even,
And you
so
made $1 million
you just have to
your
be
first
careful.
year?
Oh, yeah, easy.
Easy? Okay, yeah.
Easy.
So what happened the first year or two? Were you
The first year or 2, I don't know, maybe the first year I did maybe 6 books, 5 books, 6 books, I don't know, not many,
okay? And they were all highly
not many,
profitable?
and a lot of those were royalty share, and I don't think I've ever seen anything from them.
So
So,
you paid some
um
dues. Is that what I'm hearing?
mm, definitely. Also I also you'll hate to hear this, but I edited my first book all myself.
Yeah. That
I
doesn't
did the
bother me
whole
at all.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, and it was good. It was and I feel like it's good to know how to do that,
I,
even if it's better if you can outsource it to people who can do it more quickly for you and you can focus on the narration. But
yeah.
if you're not booking a lot and you have the time, learn it. Learn how to edit it yourself, know what you're listening to, know how to at least do the basics.
Yeah, well, you have
That's
two
really
advantages
useful.
there. When you outsource it, you know if they're doing a decent job or not. So
Mhm.
that's helpful. If I know nothing about cars, then I'm at the mercy of the mechanic I happen to get. And
It's
sometimes
true.
they talk a good game and then they take my money, if I know enough about it. But then the other thing that comes up is people like you that have just enough skills there, then you can put out auditions in a very short period of time, as opposed to the people that have to send them out to somebody else for the audition
Ooh,
part,
yeah.
and you can
I
end up
wouldn't want
putting
to have
out.
to pay somebody to edit an audition.
Yeah, that's
That's
kind of
that's
distasteful, because
yeah.
especially in the beginning, some people. First off, some people are gonna fall into something that works for them, and they only audition for a few and they get it. That's
Mhm.
not the norm anymore, because these rights holders are getting 100 auditions within the first 2 days, and if yours is fantastic, but it's audition number 73, boy, the odds are low of getting that book. And you have to be quick anymore to get in on this game. And if you're not, people, and I sometimes see people, oh, how many you have to do before you book? And I always think, well, boy, does that depend on you. And
Yeah.
how many would you audition for in the early, so remember, going back 7 years ago, for those watching,
Mhm.
7 years ago was a different world in terms of the numbers of narrators and then the quality of the books or the differences.
Pre-pandemic, yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So how many would you audition for? You got six the first year. Do you have a rough idea how many you auditioned for in that first year? Just ballpark?
I don't know, maybe
You did 12 auditions or you did
no,
50?
more than that, maybe 25. I
Okay.
don't know,
Okay.
something like that.
But on the other
Yeah.
hand, you were doing things that you had a specialty. I mean, coming into the book world, especially first off, at that time the UK was not on ACX, so nobody in the UK could be a
Limited, very
narrator.
limited.
Yes, and
It was
so
limited.
you were a specialist at that point that was doing something that, I mean, I can't do, and I don't want to say 90%, whatever. A significant number could not do what you were doing, especially 7 years ago. Correct? Incorrect?
Certainly there were less British narrators on ACX, I would think, but also less books that called for a British narrator as well.
Uh,
So, I mean, there's only certain number of books that I can do. I mean, nonfiction, mostly I could probably do unless it's written first person and the writer is American. I could probably do a book that was a fantasy books work because they're not set in a specific geographical area.
okay.
But, I remember turning down books because the author's like, "No, I want you to read my book. I really, really want you to read but your book is set in World War II in America. It's like a real time, real place, and I'm like, it's just going to be a disconnect
Yeah.
for your listeners if it is not going to help your book hearing it in a British accent. So, I was able to recommend some people to her, but
Well, here would be a
yeah.
question. So if you, how many books were you doing on ACX before you started going to publishers? Because I think today you do
Mm.
99% through ACX, just royalty share. Is that close?
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's where you're working toward, right?
That's the goal.
No,
I don't know when I last booked on ACX.
yeah, you're with the
A while
yeah,
back. I don't generally audition a lot on ACX now, although a lot of the authors, when I work directly with an indie author,
yeah,
a lot of them will choose to go through ACX, so I
okay.
still use it as a platform. Um, and still now, I would say probably 80% of my work is directly with indie authors, and I'm still trying to get work with some publishers. There's a few publishers, smaller publishers and distributors that I work with, but none of the big 5. So, there is work out there that's not with the big
So how do you
publishers.
find them in your niche? I mean, because so someone new is saying, well, okay, that's really good. You're not working through ACX. You're finding books to do, and maybe you go
Mhm.
through ACX at the end. My wife has one that we just did, and she got paid crazy. Well, and we did a royalty share with them, but with a side deal where there was a per finished hour. So she
Mhm.
had multiple $100 per finished hour and royalty share
That's
because
nice.
she's been
Yeah.
doing this. She worked for another author 5 years ago, and they recommended her,
There you
and
go.
and it's through those recommendations where people trust. Okay, this and she also had a big body of work. How many books did you need to do on ACX before these authors were starting to be interested in you? The publishers. How long did you do just
I don't
ACX?
even I don't even know. I think probably 2020 was a big year for me in that, obviously it was a big year for everybody, but, that's when I started working with some publishers because I was already set up to work at home rather than them having to pivot, um, to get narrators set up at home. So that was good in that way. My indie work now comes a lot from word of mouth, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest.
Mm-hmm.
It comes word of mouth from, repeats,
Yes.
like a series. Maybe the author has a new book coming out in the series, and I'll do that. Um, and also just reaching out to authors directly, finding books that sound like, "You know what? I think I would enjoy doing that. That seems like, my kind of thing." So I'll reach out to authors directly. And if the book's doing well, the author's gonna pay you PFH, per finished hour anyway.
Right.
So, and
Is it?
sometimes it's good money as,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
I think people don't
it's
understand.
work, it's proper work,
Yeah.
it's not just it's not just I'm doing this as a vanity project.
Yeah.
Although sometimes books like that come up and you're like, "You know what? I want to do this if I have time in my schedule." I like to do a certain number of royalty shares a year or something like that, so I have to limit them now, which is nice.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah. Yeah.
before, it's like, "I'm not doing anything, I might as well do a royalty share."
Right.
But
Right.
but I don't think royalty shares are necessarily a bad deal because you get those checks coming in if
Yeah.
it's a good one.
Yeah. 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 You know what? So people don't understand. Anybody who's ever dabbled in the stock market or other investment type things knows that if you only have one stock, then you're at the mercy of what happens with that one company, and that can be fantastic which I never did, if I had bought Apple early on or Microsoft or pick a company that,
Don't we wish?
yeah, that we all think, oh gosh, if I had just put in $5 back then, it would be worth X millions, whatever. But if they're going to be in the audiobook business and they're starting with royalty share, they need to have a portfolio because it may take 50 books to then have within that 50, they'll have half dozen or a dozen that actually make a ton of money and make up for all the other 45 books that didn't make a lot of money. Because I know we've seen it directly ourselves where it's crazy to get a check 3 to 5 years later on something. And then for those of you that are newer, we had this one author who we did a set of things, a series, And what happened was something happened about 3 years later where that author got on some forum and they did something and people started buying book number 5, and because they loved that and it got such good reviews, they went and bought the whole back catalog, and my
Nice.
wife had done the whole series. And all of a sudden we're like, where did this go? What the heck happened here? Why did this change so much in this month? And it kept on for a while and it was crazy. I mean, the per finished hour that we earned on that is ridiculous. Over
Mhm.
$500 a finished hour for something, but it all came in 3 years after the initial thing, and you can't predict
Wow.
that. There's no way we would
Yeah.
have known in the early stages that that would work that way. It was just part of our, hey, build a portfolio, have it big enough, and then now I have all sorts
Mhm.
of people that have a portfolio, and they can go to the majors. You can too, by the way. And now, what do you think it's going to take in order to get through to the publishers that you want to be with? Do you have any ideas? How are you trying to sneak in there?
Yeah, I'm in contact with most of them, nearly all of them. And so I'm on like their roster or on their radar peripherally at least. And it's a constant keeping in contact with them, keeping them up to date with what you're doing. Just letting them know that, "Hey, I'm still here." And, one day you hear stories like, I was emailing this publisher for 2 years, and one day I sent them an email, and they sent me an email back saying, "Just got this. You
Right,
sound perfect for it."
right.
It's a timing thing.
Yeah.
So, you can't take it personally. You just gotta keep trying and keep honing your craft and, so that when that book does come, you're ready.
Yeah, I do think it's a business of being relationships combined with being at the right place at the right time to
Yes.
to get started with them. And also, then when your opportunity comes, hopefully you're prepared and you've done enough homework that
Mhm.
you have all the little pieces that are already in place, because to try to get them, to try to build all that stuff right after you get the book, boy, that's a nightmare.
Mhm.
And they really only give us one chance once we get there. If that first one goes well, you've got a good chance of having an ongoing. That first
Yeah.
one, if I mess something up, they have too many choices these days, and especially
That's true.
after the pandemic. So, what are you working on now? What's the next thing that you want to go after?
What's the next thing I want to go
Yeah, do you
after?
have you thought about that? If you were going to expand, where are you going after?
Um, Gosh, if I'm gonna expand, like, beyond audiobooks?
No, 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 just within the
Oh,
audiobook
okay,
niches.
within audiobooks,
Yeah,
yes, I think more fantasy. I
that's
do
a
a lot of historical fiction, so doing more fantasy would be fun. Also, maybe some rom-com. I like humor. I
okay.
like I like
Yeah.
to do something with some humor in it, so some good rom-coms would be nice. The series that I'm narrating right now are historical romance, but they have almost like a rom-com feel to them. There's some humor in there, so it's really nice to bring that out.
Well, I know
Yeah.
that you have a big website, and it kind of shows that you hate the UK. Um, uh, right? I mean,
Well, when you feel like your accent is something that's you've got going for you, you just go for it.
okay. Well, so in the show notes, yes. Well, that's the one thing I did notice. You play your strengths. You're not shy about the fact that you're from the UK. Even if you've lived in 10 places since being there, you definitely are making a big deal, and I think that's just smart. I'm going to be silly to go ahead and play up. I've been to the UK about 15 times in my life. It's not the same as
Eh,
somebody who grew up there. And so, what do you have any recommendations for new people in terms of what they should be focusing on if they want to turn out like you, or you get ongoing
okay.
books and
Don't try and turn out like me, but the I think the idea is you've got to be yourself. First of all, be confident in your own voice.
and if
I
I'm
think
not,
if you're not, then work on that. Yeah, work on being confident in your own voice. Um some of the things I did do, I had some narrators which I just loved and I thought they were great, so I thought I wanted to narrate in their style. But no, that's ridiculous because first of all, that's not authentic. And second of all, being yourself is your greatest strength, right? That's what makes you unique. That's what makes you stand out. If you're going to get hired above whoever narrator, then you've got to be yourself. And I think learning to be confident in my own voice
Hmm.
was a big up level for me at
How
one
did you
point.
do that though? How do I become confident in my voice? What did you take? Did you go to seminars? Did you take coaching? Did you
I
take
think I
theater?
heard it. I think I heard it enough
Hmm.
from other narrators. They're like, no, be yourself,
Okay.
kind of thing, from coaches. Um, and once I relaxed more, because if you're focused on your voice and you're focused on trying to sound like something, um, it affects your performance. It affects your connection because you're thinking about all these other things, right?
Right.
So if you just relax and just like be, that's when I got the best feedback. And I was like, but I wasn't even trying then. And they're like, that's it. That's what you need to do. You need to relax more and just be yourself and bring that. Don't leave it outside of the booth. Bring yourself with you. Does that,
Yeah,
does that
yeah.
make sense?
Well, we were talking this morning. So before we started, both of us happened to overnight uh, be up very late. I had to take somebody to the airport for a very early morning flight that left at about 7 a.m. So I was up about 3:30 this morning. And Lillian was up with a family situation, and so she ended up being up at, I don't know, 3 or 4 in the morning as well. Both of us got very little sleep last night, so we talked about morning voice versus afternoon voice, and we'd
Yeah.
come on. And I know today I have more of my morning voice because I didn't get much sleep last night. So how do you approach your recording during a given day? Do you like to record in the morning? Do you do in the afternoon? What does your day look like when you're doing this?
Yeah, I do narrate in the morning, but I normally try and get my admin done first, which gives me time to hydrate and warm up my voice. And doing vocal warm-ups really, really does help me. I used to skip it, and then I realized how much it actually does benefit. And
W-
so doing some proper just you can just talk to yourself. I tend to go through the alphabet and do different articulators and make funny faces and all that kind of stuff. So
w-
that also helps with the mouth noise as well, if your mouth is properly warmed up. And mouth noise is one of those things that I really, really hate. So it's,
Yes.
it's,
It's the bane of all of us.
it's horrible.
Can you tell me more about the exercises you do? Where did you get them? Did you make them up for yourself? You got them from a coach? You got them from another? How do I
Yeah,
find? How do
these
I
are
warm
things
up
I've
my voice?
yeah, these are things that I've picked up from different coaches and other narrators as I've gone along, and I'll even massage my mouth here because sometimes I get a little click right here if I've been clenching my jaw, and then I'll be sticking my tongue all the way out and back and rolling my tongue, and I do the ba bear bee bo boo pa pa pee po poo, and I go
Yeah,
through the all the articulators, um, and then the I'm not gonna make funny funny faces on camera. I mean,
well,
I could, but it's gonna be like with
yeah,
my tongue sticking out. But I do all of that, and, sometimes, you can do it in the shower. It
yeah.
doesn't have to take long, but it does help to bring that morning husky lower voice down, and as you warm up, you get slightly higher,
Yeah.
and it helps to even out, like we were saying earlier, like when you get pickups from a book that you did 2 weeks ago or whatever, and you're listening, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna match that tone.
Right.
You wanna make sure that it's as level as possible.
Yeah, but here's the big thing. The exercises that you're doing, those are not something new. Like you and I did not create those. Those have been
No.
around for decades, and singers do it. Anybody who voices for a living at a high level, very often they've had some sort of training in the background. Singers have it down to a science. They've been doing this for
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
you can find them on YouTube,
Yes,
all
yes,
kinds of vocal warm-ups and tongue twisters and
yes.
everything, and, it really does help.
Okay. So you do that for 32 seconds every morning
Yeah.
work?
Yeah,
30?
maybe 10 seconds, and I'm done, and my voice is pitch perfect.
So how long
Yeah.
does it
I
take to
don't know
do?
how long it
Do you know?
takes.
Do you
May
have
No, probably only 10 minutes.
Okay, but 10 minutes. But that's good. That's
Yeah,
good to
probably only 10
So you're
minutes, and
doing
then
10
I'll
minutes of
see.
vocal warm up before you start most days, correct?
I am,
And I
yeah.
think that's a
Maybe I should do it longer, I don't know. I usually just spend 10 minutes on it, I have to
I'll
say.
bet you. So here's my take on that somebody who's practiced countless thousands of hours playing music and doing certain repetitive things. Well, in the beginning, it might take somebody 20 minutes to do those because they actually need to think about doing them well, not just doing them.
Mm,
Doing them with a purpose so that, and I do not know the right way or a more polished way to do any of those exercises. Like if we took one, I wouldn't know what's a stronger way to do it, a weak way to do it. I wouldn't know. But I would find somebody who does and then practice that. And very often when we're first doing a new exercise, we have to practice it a little slower. So somebody newer might take 15 minutes or 20 minutes for the first month or two going through those exercises. Now you've been doing them, what, this is your third week of doing those kind of vocal
yeah.
exercises? Is
Yeah, yeah. I picked it up. I looked it on YouTube before I popped on here, and I thought I'd better warm up my voice before I talk to Don, and so I picked something, did it. Probably 3 years.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
yeah.
So that just tells other people that, one, start yours. If you're not doing it before you voice, do it. And the other thing that will come up is when pickups come in. So if you hear something, do you instantly, like my wife she knows her morning voice, she knows her evening voice. I've said this before,
Mhm.
and she will instantly think, because she'll say it out loud to me. Oh yeah, this one isn't doing for a couple days, and I know that's morning. I'm just going to wait and do it tomorrow morning when I start, rather than try to hit it. If she's under deadline, she will do it. Now she treats those when they're like, if she's doing something in the evening and she did morning voice, she treats it like a character voice. She is
Yeah,
imitating herself, but she will do what
it's
needs to
true.
be done, and she can match her morning voice in the evening or opposite. But she has
Mhm.
to really work at it, and she's very conscious of it, and she'll do it. And I listen to it and I go, cool. I can't tell which one you were. It just
Yeah.
works. Do you have the same sort of thing? That do you wait till the next day, or do you, if you had done one in the evening and now you're recording in the morning,
Mm.
do you decide to wait till evening, or you just hear it and go, oh, I need to match that? How do you approach that?
It depends. Usually, I have a day or a morning for pickups, and I just need to get them done. Um, I might come back if it's like a guy voice and it was particularly low. Um, but I can usually tell
Mm-hmm.
when I record. Well, I try and keep it pretty even, so I can't always tell. But I can tell. Like now, it's springtime,
Uh-huh.
and the allergies are hitting,
Right.
and I can tell my vocal quality. I get a little lower
Okay.
when I have really bad allergies, and that's now I know that's just the quality of my voice now.
Right.
So, it's not a lot different, but I can tell, and so, like, the whole book will sound slightly different, and
Right.
I don't know if people who listen might be able to tell, but, people who know me might be able to tell, but most people aren't gonna be able to tell that there's that, but I can tell I have my allergy voice now.
Yeah. And
It
here's the
adds
weird
a
thing.
slightly vocal quality to it.
I don't think anybody else cares. And I
Oh
mean,
god.
really, no, we're all hyper conscious of ourselves. And this came up earlier this week for me in one of my groups, where somebody was saying, "Oh, there's this little sound in my voice," and I'm thinking, everybody has what I call a beauty mark or a birthmark in their voice, and it's unique to them. And
Mhm.
it may, in isolation, if I just loop something that's about 3 words long, it sounds funny. But in the aggregate, they're not listening for that sound. They're listening to the story if I'm a decent actor. And so if you're acting well, they're listening to the story. We get caught up in the little thing about, oh, wait, I heard that little gurgle. Nobody else really
True.
cares unless it's got to be something that's pretty out there for others to notice. And it may bother me. But if I play it for people and say, hey, if you hear anything that bothers me, let me know, they never pick up on it. So
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Do you run things by people to get their point of view on it, on your
If
acting?
I'm really concerned about something,
Mhm.
like a sound, like, do I sound like my nose is stuffed up?
Oh, okay.
You know, something like that, if I'm really concerned, and I have to record something.
Mhm.
Um, but, most of my stuff goes to a outside editor anyway, so
Yeah.
he's gonna tell me if
Yeah.
there's something. He's pretty good at telling me if there's an issue.
How long did you do stuff yourself before you transitioned to an editor?
Years.
Years? Yeah, okay,
Years.
that's normal.
Yeah.
It's a lot
Yeah.
more normal than most really realize. A lot of people
Yeah.
do that for a period of time.
Yeah, and, I did a novella in a few weeks ago,
Mhm.
and I was like it was 2.5 hours long. I'm like, "I'm just gonna do this myself."
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know,
Well,
most of the time I send it out, though.
it trains your ears, and also as you get more mature, you can cut out a whole lot of editing by doing a great job recording. And people that are newer are not doing a great job recording. They don't know what's happening editing wise. So there's just they just have a lot more work. People don't realize how much work it is to get started.
It is, and it took me months to do my first book.
Right.
I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
It was months, and I over listened to everything, and I'm probably over edited it,
We
but
all do. We all do.
it was,
That's normal.
yeah, exactly. It's not what you want, but it's just the way things happen, and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. So, can you give us the name of your website so that people can check you out and how if do I remember it right? Let's see. Lillian, and then which last name? Oh, you have two first
Rachel.
names.
Yeah, lillianrachel.com.
Spell
That's
Rachel
it.
for me so I get it right.
Rachel. That's my middle name.
Ah, okay. I was gonna say you have two
Yeah,
first
so
names.
yeah, so I narrate under my first and middle name because I don't know why, just decided to do that to make life interesting. lillianrachel.com.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is pull that up, and I want to pull this up. And did I get that right?
You did, thank you.
Okay,
Look at that.
I do recommend, by the way, you check her out, and there's it's actually fun to see people's backstory, and you can learn a whole bunch by following. And I love that when you go to that site, you're going to notice she leans into her strength. And she makes a big deal about the fact that she's from this foreign country that doesn't speak the language, and she came here without speaking any English. Well, wait. Uh, no, but that's a lot better than me trying to go ahead and say, you know, I do young man stuff. I mean, first off, if you're a certain age, I mean, I could play younger maybe if I learned how to do that. If I were a great actor, I might be able to play a 20-year-old. I'm not
Mm.
going to do that. But you lean into your strength. What I for a while I did something else, and I just said I called myself something Don Silver, because
Oh.
I had so much gray hair, and grayer than it is right now. I have a little color in there, but don't tell anybody. It's a secret. But it was so Snow White, like Santa Claus, that I leaned into it, and I just in that little thing I was doing 20 years ago, I called I my name was Don Silver, because people are always going, "Wow, you don't look as old. Your hair is lighter than your age than what you look face wise." And I did what you did, and so you are an excellent example of leaning in to what you're all about, rather than trying to say, "Well, I'm an American." It's like, cool, you are, but
Right?
right?
Yeah.
Because you've been here
Yeah,
long. But
I
but it
am.
also it's helpful to do what you do well, and you are you. And I just think that's so brilliant. You're brill, in
Oh,
order to do that.
real.
Do they still use that over there? They use it.
I don't know. Probably not. There's all new
Yes,
things all the time, aren't there? So
it is changing. I just remember a bunch
yeah,
of kids would say, "Oh, that's brill," and I'm like, "Okay, thank you." And I'd say, "Oh, cool," and they go, "No, no, no, that's not cool."
that's not
It's
cool.
yes.
Mm.
I see Lillian used. Um, so Andrews asked a
Yes.
question here. Let's see. You used. I don't understand that comment. Can you? Do you?
Okay, so Celia Siegel is a branding manager, and I did use her to help me with my branding and my website.
Okay.
Um, So, yes, she helped me to lean into my strength and just own it and just like, "No, this is great." I had pictures taken in the Union Jack dress, and she's like, "Let's use those. They're fabulous." I'm like, "Okay, not too much." And she's like, "No, let's do it." So, I it was great working with her, and she did help me to really just pick out that and say, "Let's just run with that," you
Right.
know? It's bold, so
Right.
I don't always have to be out there telling everybody who I am.
And I thought it was
Did
brilliant when I saw it, by the way. So
it
I
was
definitely,
good.
it was one of the first things I picked up was, oh, she's leaning into her strength. I love that. So I was not that,
Yeah,
but I did notice it.
yeah, and then she said, "Does she feel this helped her get going in VO?" I was already going in VO. To, I waited until I really decided what I wanted to do as far as which genre I wanted to work in rather than, like, VO generally. I'm like, "No, I'm just gonna lean into narration, just long form narration is what I want to do." So, I only did I worked with Celia last year, so it was fairly recently that
Okay.
I rebranded with her. I rebranded because my previous website, which I had done myself, which, well, it was okay, but, it was adequate. I got good feedback on it, but it was, British-born, DC-based, and obviously, with moving to California, that tagline wasn't going to work, so I wanted something completely new, something that would take me wherever I was going to go, that I wouldn't have to necessarily update in the future. So
Wow. Cool. Any upcoming things you want to promote or tell the audience about?
any upcoming things? Well, I can tell you that I'm building my own sound booth here in California in my back garden, and that is another learning
Yeah.
experience, learning lots of new things there. So that's going to be fun. I won't have to be in my closet anymore, and I will have my own dedicated space once more. So if you want to follow that journey, you can find me on socials, I guess. You'll see updates on that on the socials. And
Cool.
yeah,
It,
that's the big
we'll have to
news in
have you
my
back
life.
after yours is done so you can tell me about it. I mean, I've built a bunch of them, and I love, I'm in a dedicated building. I'm not in the home. I've helped my son build all sorts of walk-in closet type spaces
Mhm.
over the years. I've done plenty of those, but I'm in a separate building.
That's what I'm having. I'm
you know,
so looking forward to it.
yeah.
Simply because there's no room in this house. There's
Okay.
nowhere to put a booth, nothing. And so we decided, I put a lovely little shed in the back corner of the garden,
Yep. Smart.
and,
Smart.
now we're building all the interior walls
Yep.
for it, so
Oh, it makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I have dogs and I had 5 kids, and it was, when we moved, that was part of my criteria was with 5 kids.
mm,
It's interesting trying to have a space that's quiet when you have 5 kids. It doesn't, anyway, that's a challenge. I mean, we did work through it when we were all in the same house, but it was much
yeah.
nicer when there was a separate outbuilding. So thank you so much for joining us this week. And make sure for the audience that you can check out her website. She never wants to hear from anybody, so don't ever contact. No, wait. You can send. She's got a nice form on there if you want to send her something, if you want to get her advice on something. Or if you're a publisher and you have a project that needs world-class British accent, then
There you go.
you have a source now, okay? Somebody that you should be paying attention to. And of course, we'll be back next week. And I Heller is off in New Orleans, and I can't remember what's
Yeah.
happening next week. But I think, matter of fact, if I remember right, you're gonna get me and my son in because I'm doing something special with that. I'll have some announcements later this week, and then of
Oh,
course in a couple hours, every Tuesday, VO Tech Simplified Live is going to be on. So follow the channel here. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to pass this on to others. And as always, any final words you want to say to our audience, Lillian, before we go for the day? No?
thanks for listening.
All right. Glad you were here. Thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate you. And we'll see you all next week. And of course, we'll see you on the wires. Bye bye.